Everybody, thanks for watching and thanks for taking the time to purchase and support. And welcome to the 11th book in the Biblical Bible series, which is First Kings, which is basically really a part of First and Second Samuel. When you understand how it was originally written, it was all one book. So they just broke it up in basically 4 parts. But it's, it was called Kings, the Book of Kings. So it's all the same, really. But First Kings, we had at the end of Second Samuel. Dave's getting old, and he's at the end of his rule. He had just come out of basically having a bunch of Hebrew Israelites killed, 70,000, because he or Satan was told to number Israel. So First Chronicles I read, Satan tells him. We read in Second Samuel, it's God. But contradiction nonetheless, that's going to make sense later. We'll get into that. But it starts off with David narrating the end of his life. And he has a son, Adonijah, however you want to pronounce it, who's basically trying to capture the moment and steal the throne for himself away from Solomon. So Adonijah, he gets support from Joab, which remember Joab, or Joab, however you want to pronounce it, was David's commander. Joab is the one who basically was killing everybody. So Joab basically sides with Adonijah, and they conspire to steal a throne from Solomon. So Nathan, the prophet, gets wind of it. He goes and tells Bathsheba. Remember, Bathsheba is the one that was bathing, and King David saw her. She was married to Uriah, and he had a baby with her. Remember, the first baby died. The second baby was Solomon. So Adonijah, he's trying to steal the throne. They find out about it. They run to David and, tell David what's going on. So David, before he dies, he go ahead and have the whole ceremony with the priest to tell him to go ahead and, make sure Solomon rules, anoint Solomon as the next ruler. So Adonijah is basically like, damn. So what Solomon does, once he becomes king, he cleans house. Solomon is not playing. He kills. Remember, Joab been riding with David for a long time, the whole thing. Kills Joab and everybody else who conspired with them to kill him. Now his brother Adonijah, he spares him. He tells him, we cool, my brother. I'm not gonna kill you. Just basically chill out. Stop trying to steal the throne from me. Everything gonna be straight. So before Solomon was king, what David did, David was getting old, and of course he getting old. His wife's getting old. So. He wanted a younger wife. So he basically takes this young woman as his concubine, and she's young. She's basically there to just, make him feel good until he died. So once he's dead and Solomon is king, as I said before in 2 Samuel, when a king passes, kingdom down to another king, everything that was that king when he dies automatically goes, to the new king. Makes sense, right? He's dead. He don't need it no more. So that includes his concubines. So Adonijah, who basically promised not to do anything, he sees an opportunity, and he basically goes to Bathsheba and tries to convince her. He convinces her, "Hey, I want to marry David's widow." He's thinking, if I marry her, then the people will kind of sort of see me as the rightful ruler, and Solomon was like, yo, dude, I told you to chill out. So when he finds out that this dude is trying to marry her to try to make himself look like he's the rightful king and have people look at him as a king because he's married to her, Solomon's like, you know what? I warned you, you're dead. Kills him. Has him killed. And this is how it begins with Solomon. Solomon cleans house, and God looks at him completely different, because one of the things Solomon does differently from everybody else, he asks God for wisdom. Like, everybody's messing up. Give me the wisdom. Forget everything else. The one thing he asks for is the wisdom so he can know how to rule. So God grants him this super wisdom that you would think would carry him, in a rightful place, but it doesn't, as you'll see. So since, Solomon, this guy's dude, he's asking for wisdom, and he's asking for what he needs to ask for to be a good servant of God. So God gives him, not only wisdom, money and everything, So Solomon basically unites everybody, kicks all the the prostitutes and all the stuff that's going wrong in Israel out, and he kind of puts things in order. So remember, God tells David that his son will basically build his temple, and God comes to Solomon in a couple dreams and tells him, hey dude, if you basically be as good as your pop and you follow my commandments and you be good, you're going to build my temple and I'll dwell there. He comes to visit Solomon a couple times. David also tells Solomon on his deathbed right before he died, pulls Solomon over and tells Solomon, hey man, follow the commandments, lead the people straight, don't sin against God, and told him basically what to do because God ain't playing no games, he'll kill you. And Solomon was like, yeah, okay, I get it. So, God comes to the dream, tells him, Solomon has this information, he know what he needs to do, just like the rest of the guys when you really understand. But, we'll get into what happens. But first things first, we all know Solomon from Solomon's temple. And Solomon builds this temple. And when he builds the temple, he becomes famous. Solomon becomes super famous. Everybody knows Solomon. Now, supposedly this temple was built 1000 BCE, destroyed by the Babylonians in the 6th century BCE, which no proof of Solomon's temple. Nobody can prove it was ever built, so on and so forth. We understand this. But to the story, builds this temple, becomes famous. Everybody knows him. And again, nobody outside the Bible mentions this dude. So, of course, he's just made for the Bible. As we'll get into in a second. So one of the things Solomon does ask God for, that God did like, is that everybody who came from outside of Israel, everybody who came to worship at the temple, because it was supposed to be so magnificent and everybody was hearing stories about it, everybody who comes to the temple, he asks God to basically bless them and forgive them for their sins against him. Now it says here, it's 1 Kings 8. I'll start here at 49. It says, then hear thou their prayer and their supplication in heaven, thy dwelling place, and maintain their cause, and forgive thy people that have sinned against thee, and all their transgressions wherein they have transgressed against thee, and give them compassion before them who carried them captive, that they may have compassion on them. For they be thy people, and thy people inheritance, which thou broughtest forth out of Egypt, from the midst of the furnace of iron, that thine eyes may be open unto the supplication of thy servant, and unto the supplication of thy people Israel, to hearken unto them in all that they call for unto thee. For thou didst separate them from amongst all the people of the earth, to be thy inheritance, as thou spakest by the hand of Moses thy servant, when thou broughtest our fathers out of Egypt, O Lord God. And it was so that when Solomon had made an end of praying all this prayer and supplications unto the Lord, he arose from before the altar of the Lord, from kneeling on his knees, how else do you kneel, with his hands spread up to heaven, and he stood and blessed all the congregation of Israel with a loud voice, saying, Blessed be the Lord that hath given rest unto his people Israel, according to all that he promised, that have not failed one word of all his good promise, which he promised by the hand of Moses his servant. The Lord our God be with us, as he was with our fathers. Let him not leave us nor forsake us. And when you continue reading and you go on reading, it's giving you every single understanding that the people understand who God is and what God has done for them, that they understand the history, they know the power, they have witnessed it, they have seen it. Why would you continue to sin? So you have Solomon getting into all this. Forgive the people, because remember, people scattered, and you got other people who went off and set up kingdoms, other people who went on to other kingdoms that worship other gods and mixed them with them, but they're still supposed to be all from God's people who supposedly was, let out of Egypt. So he's saying, I know they're going against you, but they still your people, even though they were other people. Bless them when they come here, and forgive them and answer their prayers when they come here, because they technically still your people. So gives the prayer. The people acknowledge it, and the temple is built, and they go into the building of King Solomon's temple, which we will not touch on because it's just verse after verse after verse. I mean, they list all kinds of equipment and things that was used to build Solomon's temple, measurements and so on and so forth. It's a bunch of bullshit for something that was never built, plain and simple. So this is what's happening in the beginning of First Kings. So quick recap: Solomon, king now, kills basically everybody from fucking Second Samuel. They dead. He leading a new group of people. They with him. They following him. He's stinking rich. He's famous. Everything is going well with Solomon. Now, the biggest part about this, of course, is the Freemasonry part of this. Who is King Solomon? What does King Solomon have to do with Freemasonry? So, the master builder of the Temple of Solomon was Hiram Abiff, as they call him. Now, what are the things when you really understand how elaborate King Solomon's temple was supposed to have been, and that we understand that Masons are builders, and that coded within Masonry is the knowledge of the universe, the knowledge of building, math, science, geometry, so on and so forth. For you to build in the way that these people are building goes back to the ancient Egyptians and how they built to mimic, the universe, the stars, the heavens, what was in space. So above, as above, so below. So all of that is intertwined with Masonry, and Hiram Abiff was a Mason who overseen the building of Solomon's temple, which was supposed to be amazing. So every candidate that enters into the third degree of Freemasonry is told the story of Hiram Abiff, which have many different, stories. It's different stories, but basically it goes: Hiram Abiff, master builder, was building, and three supposed Masons, they basically, ambushed him and tried to force him to tell the secrets to Masonry, the next level. Give me the master words and tell me the secrets, and then give me the knowledge of what's going on. And Hiram Abiff stays silent, until death. First man hits him, second man hits him, third man kills him. That's how the story goes. And he dies, and the key to the story, the main point they're trying to make is fidelity. Is keeping the secret under penalty of death, that you can be put right here, right now, on the spot, have your life threatened, and basically be beaten and being in pain and fear, of dying, but yet you don't give up anything. You say nothing. You take death over dishonor. You take death over revealing the secrets. You die to keep the secrets of Masonry. And that's the story of Hiram Abiff and what they try to, give to the Master Masons, to the third degree initiates of Freemasonry. So it's a lot more into that, which we'll touch on at some point. But this is, the story of Hiram Abiff, and it goes into Masonry, and it's a lot dealing with that as well. So what is the whole thing? I mean, we know King Solomon's temple. So what is it? King Solomon's temple was supposed to house the Ark of the Covenant. And that's one of the things we got to beat up first, so you can understand the Ark of the Covenant and what that's about. Because a lot of people, when they dig into Freemasonry, they understand, okay, y'all own King Solomon's temple, Hiram Abiff. What is up with all that? What is the power in it? One, understanding as a Mason, they look at it and say, well, it's the knowledge of, math and all that built into the temple. So it's a lot of esoteric stuff in that. But then religious people look at it and say, well, we're talking about the place where the Ark of the Covenant was housed, where God said himself that he's going to dwell. So what is up with that? The Ark of the Covenant. And when you really get into this thing, you're talking about almost most of the Old Testament we've been reading so far. They carry an Ark of the Covenant. Now, the Ark of the Covenant is supposed to contain the rod of Aaron, supposedly, the tablets, the law of Moses, the laws, and a jar of manna. So we know they're carrying this ark around, it's giving them powers and all this kind of stuff like that. But we also know 100% for sure they stole the ark from Egypt. The description of the ark fits exactly the reliefs that we see in Egypt that's in stone. Long before anything biblical, we have these arks, which they're called barks. Well, you understand, you have ark, you have bark, the sacred bark. So when you look at these, and I'm just going to read here so it's better, more clear to you to understand what this stuff is about. So now it says here, found on Seti I's mortuary temple in Cuma, and the bark of Horus, which, understand real quick, the bark you have a sacred bark, and it's Ark. It's like a boat, and they carrying it, and you have it covered in gold. Either it's going to be a god inside the bark, or it's going to be a person's, remains inside the bark that they use and they carry for basically like a spiritual festival, which we're going to talk about in a second. Now, it says here, and the bark of Horus in the temple of Ifu. Like the Ark of the Covenant, sacred barks were carried on poles by priests, the so-called pure ones, who had performed purification rituals in order to hoist the bark. Though most Egyptian rituals were never witnessed by the public, the procession of the sacred bark was an important exception. It was the focus of an intense series of festivals throughout the year, as many as 5 to 10 per month, which involved loud music and dancing. You see the same thing in China. During the celebration, priests carried the bark from one shrine to another and made stops along the way, during which they dramatized mythological scenes. The route and length of the procession varied depending on the gods they carried and their mythologies. The bark also gave oracles. While resting at one of the stations, it could be consulted by written oracles, and while en route during the procession, it could be asked a question to which it will respond yes or no by bowing fore or aft. Some priests marched before the bark, wafting incense, and others alongside and behind. Some bore standards representing gnomes, much like the tribal procession of the Ark of the Covenant. While I know of no sacred bark whose footstool contained relics. And real quick, the lid that's on the Ark of the Covenant is called the Throne of God, and the box is called the Footstool of God, which you'll understand why in a second.